Welcome to the Webb Report. My name is Stuart Webb. Today we're going to talk about Governor Spencer Cox, who is the governor of Utah, who was just reelected. We're going to talk about that a little bit. There's some controversy behind that. But just wanted to talk about Governor Cox a little bit because I've only been in the state for 5 years. Love Utah. Love the people. Love living here. But not too fond of the governor. I left a state where we had Jerry Brown, Gavin Newsom, terrible, tyrannical, progressive governors, and that's one of the reasons why I left California to come to Utah, where we have now Governor Spencer Cox. He's. I'm going to show you some clips. He's an interesting character, to say the least. And I don't believe he's a conservative at all. I don't believe he respects natural law and natural rights. I believe he is essentially a character, pretty good politician, and I don't say that as a compliment. But let me play a few clips for you so you can kind of get, if you're not familiar with Spencer Cox, you can get kind of an idea of who he is. And when I came to Utah, not a fan of the previous governor, Governor Herbert. This was his lieutenant governor. And when I saw billboards go up for the 2020 election for this guy, I just knew by the look of him that I was not going to like this guy. And that's proven to be true. So let me just show you some clips of some things he's done in the recent years, things he said, ad campaigns, things like that, so you can get a gist of what kind of a character this guy is.
I'm Spencer Cox, Republican governor of Utah.
And I'm Jared Polis, Democratic governor of Colorado.
And we're here to help save your family dinners.
You know what we're talking about.
You're halfway through your second helping of mashed potatoes when your MAGA uncle decides to share his thoughts on the latest election conspiracy.
Okay, right there. Because someone questions the integrity of an election, you're acting like they're crazy. This is how he's portraying this, and they're trying to be reasonable and funny, and their whole thing is disagree better. And but really, they're trying to make someone who questions the legitimacy of an election where there were obvious suspect things going on, obvious. And you're trying to preface that and say that because you don't trust the integrity of an election, that you're crazy. And when they say conspiracy, they mean conspiracy theorist, which is a derogatory term, which doesn't even make sense how they're trying to use it in a derogatory manner, because conspiracies happen all the time, and being a conspiracy theory or being a conspiracy theorist just means that you have an opinion about a potential, you have a theory, an opinion, where usually based on some sort of evidence that a conspiracy could be going on, or something may be being covered up. And that's been proven to be true over and over again, that these things happen, that conspiracies happen. Okay, so the term conspiracy theorist, and using that word as a derogatory term to try to discredit someone, it doesn't work anymore, and it doesn't even make sense when you try to use it in a derogatory way. So let's continue.
All have that uncle.
Or instead of passing the salt, your woke niece passes along a particularly controversial fact that she read on social media.
Or maybe you're the one.
Well, here's the thing. They're trying to present these two extremes or two sides, right? Well, one side, though, let's take when they say your woke niece, talks about a controversial fact or whatever. I know, interesting how he said fact, right? So is that supposed to be true? But a conspiracy, that's definitely not true. But I think that's pretty subtle, this language. But the difference between the two is that I would say, for the most part, people that are, conservative, liberty-minded people, they're willing to hear and listen to an opinion they disagree with. Whereas progressives, and let's use the term woke, people in that camp, they're not willing to listen. They're not willing to listen to an opinion they disagree with. That's the issue. So this whole thing is about disagreeing better, when really it should be people that cannot hear opinions they disagree with. They can't handle them, or they can't even absorb them at all. Maybe we should be talking to them, because I'll sit and listen to someone talk about nonsense for 10 minutes, but I need to be able to respond. I need to be able to express my opinion. If I'm not allowed to, if only the nonsense is allowed to be spewed, then there's a problem. So really, it's mostly on one side, in one camp, where people are not willing to engage in debate, or even just engage in conversation, or just simply listen to each other's opinions, like calmly listen to each other's opinions. That's usually happening from one side. It's not equal, and that's the thing. And they're trying to portray these two extremes, which there are extremes on both sides, but the majority of it is from one side. People are not willing. The progressives, they're not even willing to hear an opinion they disagree with. So anyway, let's continue.
With the strong opinions. You know you're right, and the other side is a bunch of misguided weirdos. But there's a healthy way to deal with conflicting opinions. Actually, it's okay to disagree.
It's not just okay, it's crucial.
Did you just disagree with me about disagreeing?
Healthy disagreement means not assuming that the other side is deluded, misinformed, or actively trying to overthrow America.
A little respect and curiosity keeps resentment off the dinner table.
And out of your social media feeds.
Our nation was founded by people who profoundly disagreed.
So next time your uncle, your niece, or anyone else brings up that one topic that just drives you nuts, take a deep breath.
Be curious, ask questions. If you still disagree, that's okay, but you might find that you aren't as far apart as you think.
Conflict isn't bad. It's the way we disagree that matters. Please join us in showing America the right kind of conflict.
Together,
we can disagree better.
So I wonder how both of these guys, governors, how they would respond, or if they would be able to handle people disagreeing with them. Because my sense is that they can't handle people questioning the integrity of an election. I don't think they can handle it. They even though it's pretty obvious that there were very suspect things going on in 2020, right? It's pretty obvious. So, but I don't think these two can handle that opinion. They can't handle having a conversation about it. Their whole campaign is to disagree better. But I don't even think these two governors are willing to listen to reasonable arguments and just opinions, simply opinions from people regarding things like the election, and COVID and the lockdowns, and for that matter. So I think there's plenty of things where they're not willing to engage or even listen to an opposing opinion. I think that's actually pretty clear. So let's go to I do think they agree on this kind of behavior, though. So let's go to Governor Cox. He, for some reason, feels the need to declare his pronouns in a meeting of some sort. This was a year or two ago. But when he's obviously a man, that's self-evident and obvious. There's no need to state your pronouns. You're a man. If you're the governor of a state and you feel the need to state your pronouns, I can't take you seriously. I just can't. So let's play this.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am Governor Spencer Cox, and I have the pleasure today of hosting the first One Utah Student Town Hall. And my preferred pronouns are he, him, and his.
Thanks, Quick Media, for that clip. So he feels the need to, state his pronouns when it's very obvious he's a man, and it's self-evident. So many of these things are self-evident. It's a mockery to natural law, and which our law is based in. Our morals and our law, our founding documents are based in the concept of natural law, which these truths are self-evident, and they've been endowed by our Creator. We've been endowed with these self-evident truths. Okay, men can't become women, women can't become men. There's no need to state your pronouns. Okay, it's engaging in. It's just playing pretend and pandering to. It's political pandering to a certain group. Okay, so that right there kind of sets the stage for, knowing who this guy is, Spencer Cox. And so he just got reelected in Utah. And there's a little bit of controversy with that. So when you're engaged in politics, we have political parties, right? And this year, let's go to Phil Lyman's website. So this year, apparently at the Republican convention in Utah, the delegates voted for 67% of them voted for Phil Lyman to be their candidate for governor. So the Republican Party of Utah. This is my understanding of it. Let me see if I can simplify that. I'm trying to simplify it. And Spencer Cox only got like 32% of the vote or something. It was like, mid 60% for Lyman and mid 30s for Spencer Cox. So essentially, the Republican Party in Utah said, "We don't want Spencer Cox. I know you're the current governor. We don't want you as our candidate for the next election cycle." So apparently, what you can do is, if you're not nominated by your party to be the nominee for the party to be in the election, you can gather signatures to get on the ballot. Okay, and so apparently Spencer Cox gathered 20-something thousand signatures to get on the ballot. Okay, because he's the current governor. That's pretty sad that you're the incumbent governor of a very red Republican state where it's impossible to lose if you're a Republican as governor in the general election. It's like impossible to lose. And so that's kind of embarrassing for him that we don't want him as governor, but he still found a way to get on the ballot. Now, here's the controversy. Phil Lyman claims that they tried to get the verification and get the signatures to view them through records requests and things like that. And many of the signatures were redacted. And there was a lot of controversy with whether the signatures were legit and they met the requirements for Spencer Cox to be on the ballot. So real quick, Cox ballot scandal explained. Can a signature candidate force a direct primary? Incumbent Governor Spencer Cox lost to challenger Phil Lyman at the Utah GOP convention, 67%, here are the numbers, 67% to 32.5%, and as such failed to qualify for the primary ballot via the convention. Okay, so Spencer Cox didn't win at the convention, so he shouldn't have been on the ballot, right? Okay, when Lyman emerged as the sole Republican nominee at the convention, Cox was forced to rely on the signatures he had already collected to qualify. Lyman has filed a petition arguing that based on previous litigation surrounding Senate Bill 54, a signature candidate cannot force a direct primary when one would otherwise not have been held, as was the case here. The case is pending with the U.S. Supreme Court. Obstruction and redaction. In the meantime, according to the state law, candidates for governor are required to collect signatures from 28,000 registered voters of the same party to gain ballot access via the signature path. Cox supposedly gained his spot on the primary ballot using this process. So it goes through a bunch of reasons. I'm not going to read the whole thing, why this is disputed and why Phil Lyman has filed lawsuits with the Supreme Court, because it's pretty suspect. There's a lot of suspect things. I like using that term, sus. There's a lot of suspect things going on regarding this. But, of course, who ended up on the ballot? Spencer Cox ended up on the ballot. And, of course, being an incumbent, the only Republican on the ballot, he's going to win, no problem. Okay, there was a huge campaign to write in Phil Lyman, which I wrote him in. I don't have a particular, I'm not a huge supporter of Phil Lyman. I'm not a huge fan of Spencer Cox, and it was kind of like a middle finger to him, and just kind of how the whole thing worked out. But anyway, just wanted to chat about that and talk about our governor, because I'm not happy that he's our governor. He's definitely not my first choice. And in regards to the pronoun thing, and all the nonsense, let's just take it back to Genesis, okay? Which again, our law is based on natural law. Nature's God, and that and it all comes from Christianity, the Bible, Book of Mormon, things like that. And here's a verse from Genesis 1:27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female. Male and female. Okay? There are two sexes. Everyone knows it. It's written on our hearts. We are endowed by our Creator with these truths in our hearts. That's why when you do something terrible, you feel shame, right? And when you do something right and you do a good deed, you feel good, you feel joy, you feel peace. Okay? These things are inscribed upon our heart, just like the fact that there are only men and only women, and you can't become one or the other. You can't play pretend. Playing pretend doesn't make it reality. And that's what Spencer Cox was doing in this video when he's stating his pronouns as if he could be something other than a man. Like if he said, my pronouns are she, her. Well, okay, so he's not a woman. So so he's engaged in pretend. I mean, he's engaged in delusion and pretending, and that's who's running our state. It's very sad, and it is also suspect. When governors are supposedly supposed to be conservative and supposed to support things like natural law and natural rights, which is what our law is based on, and then they come out and do things like that. Very suspect. And one other thing I wanted to say is that Governor Cox, on the surface, he does some good things, like he signed a bill that made open carry in Utah. It made it legal to carry without a permit. Okay, I think that's good overall because it encourages people to. There's less barriers to self-defense and protecting yourself, right? Assuming that you take all the safety precautions and you're smart and a reasonable person, right? But the thing is, this is how politics works. A lot of times, a governor that claims, wants to pacify his constituents, they'll do things that they know that their base will like and support, right? And here in Utah, we're a very gun-friendly state, and so that's a popular thing to do here, right? So, doing things like that to gain political points with your base is very common in politics. I think about, was this the case here? I mean, probably. He's a politician, right? He's going to do what he's going to do. But it reminds me of like Kristi Noem. You remember during the lockdowns? Apparently she was like, yeah, let's lock down the state. But then her legislature was like, no way. And so like she knew it wasn't politically feasible for her to shut down like everyone else. So it actually worked to her advantage. She looked good, even though she disagreed with the majority of the legislature, which could override her. And it was just politically, at that point, it was just politically expedient for her to just side with the legislature. But I remember that originally Kristi Noem, the governor of, I think, South Dakota, she was like she was like for shutting down the state, from what I remember. And so she kind of only kept open the state. It was like against her will, but it made her look good. So, I mean, she benefited from it. But so a lot of times politicians, they do things out of political expediency, and to also keep any support from their base that they need. And so Spencer Cox does a lot of that, in my opinion. He does things that on the surface I like, but then the deeper things, the more important things actually, like like pretending that men can be women, women can be men, engaging in that kind of like theater. Yeah, that's terrible, and he does a lot of that, and that's wrong, and we should be pointing it out and calling it out. And people like that should not be our leaders. They should not be in power. So that's my rant on Spencer Cox. It's been on my mind for a little bit. I wanted to chat about it. So anyway, that's all I got. Thanks.